Welcome back, Alfredo. Thanks for coming back. Let's, how are things? My goal in this stream is to continue doing test-driven development for 1 hour, and we're going to work in Swift. We're going to work on a project I've been doing for a while. So thanks for coming by. If you are watching the recording on YouTube, go subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my Twitch channel, but subscribe to YouTube, where I post all recordings of live coding and other things. And drop a note in the chat if you're there. Thanks, Alfredo, for being proactive. I've sorted out some technical problems this time. Hopefully the top of my head isn't cut off. My shoulder isn't bleeding through the book cover anymore. So, little things. Let's just get into it. If folks come, they come. This is stuff I want to do with or without anyone watching. And there are a couple folks here. Let's just go. Right. This is where we are. We now have, from our survey of the survey I did. Oh, you're very welcome, Alfredo. We now have a pretty complete weighted entry. This weighted entry takes each survey response and gives it a weight, an array of problems, an array of desires, and an array of killer features. So it's all collected. Now what do we do? Let me switch over to this. Got my little rubber butt duck here. Uh-oh, are we not live? Dear. It looks like my camera is frozen. Well, then let me describe what we want. There are a few things. Now, in test-driven development, there is a common misconception that the goal is not to think. That's not true. We are always planning our next stage of attack, and experienced TDDers have built up a lot of intuition about how to, what the next step is. Of all the tests I could write, what's the next one? And sometimes the answer is, I'm not sure, just go for it and we'll find out. Now, what I want to do, since I can't show you my whiteboard, I'll just do it up in a bit of pseudocode here. So I've got a weighted entry. Let's say it has, let's call this entry 1. It has a weight of, that is, the answers have been given a weight of, I don't know, they're Fibonacci. So I think they're 8 is the highest. And let's say I have problems P1 and P2 as strings. This is just, pseudocode. What I want is to take a couple, well, I want to take all the entries and I want to sum them together, but I want to do it in this way. Let's say this has P2 and P3. What I want is to end up with a thing that says, well, P1 has a total score of 8. The problem 1. Problem 2 has a score of 8 plus. Let me change this. 8 plus 5. Right? This is the interesting part. We want to take this weight, we want to take this key, we want to match it here, we want to add this weight. So this is really the interesting problem that I want to do. A few different ways of doing this. One is that I can go through, I can already build up, but I don't have the means yet, a whole array of weighted entries. I could do that. But then I'd be stuck with an array and be like, well, how do I convert this into this format? And I think a better way would be to take a single weighted entries or make one at a time instead of having an array and saying, now accumulate the answers and weights for this particular entry. Go. And then this next one and see if they actually adds. Once I have that, then I should be able to go through an entire array and say, do the whole thing. So that's going to be my plan of attack, is to take a single entry, not a whole array of them. James Grenning teaches this with an acronym he calls zombies, in terms of sort of the order of complexity that you should try to do in TDD, where zombies, Z-O-M, is like 0, 1, many, and then I don't remember offhand what the BIES are for, but that's the thing. It's like, can you do this like for an empty array? We're not going to do that, but like, can you do this for one entry? That would be an interesting place to start. And then can we do it for 2? As soon as we can do it for 2, I think we can do it for lots. All right, that's the plan of attack. Let me actually just leave this up here. That's better, isn't it? All right. So the place to start is with tests. Something else that I realized as I was trying to set this up for today's streaming is that apparently I've gone a long time without getting the full benefits of JetBrains Mono font, which has these lovely ligatures. If you're here, let me show this here. Look at this. This may look alien to you. It's like, what the heck is that? This is a function return. And I have mistakenly had it off. So there, that probably looks a little more familiar to you, but it's not as cool. And this is one of the nice cool things, in addition to the clean, legible differences between letters of JetBrains Mono. JetBrains Mono is an awesome font. I use it in Xcode also. Let me pull that up real quick. So here it is. I'll share this. This is a fantastic coding font. Check it out. See if you like it. You may or may not care for this funky arrow, but I like it, and I didn't realize I didn't have it on. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into making a weighted entry. We're going to start with a new set of tests, and what am I testing here? It's not, I'm not testing that I make a weighted entry. I already know how to do that. I'm testing that I'm accumulating answers. Answer accumulator. Now I'm trying to think of a name, because in TDD, you do have to create an API. You have to define what is the name of the thing, even if you change it later? How do I call the thing, even if you change it later? So let's see. It's been a while since I've made a new test suite, but here we go. Using my test suite template, which is much more trimmed down than Apple's. What shall I call this? Accumulator? Answer accumulator? Answer accumulator tests. I kind of like that. That's better than foo, so let's roll with it. And the target isn't quite right. There we go. Survey core. And I'm going to give this a run to make sure that it fails. This is test 0 to ensure that I have things set up properly. Once it's fine, I get rid of it. All right, let's bring, let me bring this over from here. And this is because I can't share my whiteboard, but this is actually not a bad technique, especially when we're working remotely, and especially when you're working in a pair or an ensemble. How do you like sketch out like where you are? If you were working together in the same room, you'd use an actual whiteboard. Since we're not, we need something virtual. Well, comments are not a bad place to do stuff. So this will sort of help guide me here. Let's see. So we want to make a test. And I'm going to say like accumulate one entry. I'm going to start with 1. And that's the first thing I want to do. So let me just sort of copy this. In fact, probably won't have 2 problems, but let's give it a whirl. All right, so weighted entry. Now, the initializer for weighted entry takes a comma separated entry. I don't really want to do that because I've already got that built up for other stuff, and I just want to jam in some values here. Let me write the code the way I want it, and then we'll create it. That's TDD. So I want to say there's weight is going to be 8. Problems is going to be, let's just do 1. Hello, hello. Oh, that is Uru. If you're willing, please share where in the world you are from. And if you're watching, say hello in the chat. Glad you can make it. We have weight problems. What are the other things? Weight problems, desires, and killer features. I'm just going to define the others as empty. Oh, that is Isuru. Isuru, or Isuru. From Sri Lanka. Welcome. Desires, empty. Killer features, empty. And so this is an initializer that doesn't exist. This may seem funny, but I'm just going to make it here. Let me take this and say generate the initializer with these things. Done. That should solve that. It doesn't seem to have gone through right away. Let me build and see if this works. Okay, so this is just a ghost error. The initializer is unused. So now let's put this into a thing. If you're wondering what IDE I'm using, it's like, this is not Xcode. This is AppCode. And I just did an extract variable, and AppCode, unlike Xcode, suggests a sensible name. A lot of the times, I can just accept the name. I'm super lazy, and I love how AppCode keeps me lazy. All right, so we've got an entry, and then I need to like have the accumulator say, do this. But first, I need such an accumulator. So here's the killer feature of AppCode when it comes to test-driven development, is that you write the code the way you want to call it, code that does not exist yet, in your test, and then you say, make it. And let's make it a new file. Put it in survey core. It's going to be, I think it should be a class and not a struct, because it needs to change its values. Sort of every time it's called, it needs to change its values. So let's go with that. And there we have that. This is the system under test. So I'm going to say that's the SUT. And I really want to say SUT accumulate entry or something like that, I think. Unlike rigorous, so you're seeing the part of test-driven development where it is a little bit of, I'm just going to try something. You saw how I did some planning out, a rough plan for how to approach this problem, but not a lot of details. Like, I didn't go through and design a whole bunch of stuff. Sort of mostly in my head, because this was enough for me to see. Sometimes you do need to sketch out, what are the classes and the responsibilities and the collaborators, and make a quick and loose diagram of who's talking to who. But in this case, I know it's just going to be one thing, and you can just sort of go for it, because a lot of times, like life, in order to find the right answer for a thing, one of the easiest ways to get there is to just try something and decide if you like it or not. And if you don't, improve it. Sometimes it means throw it out and try again, and that's fine too. So accumulate calls this unknown method. Let's make it. Entry is good. It takes a weighted entry. We don't know what it does. Ghost error still lingering there. I may have to report that to JetBrains. And then what? Like we do this and then I should be able to say, give me the score for P1. And this, I'm going to store this in a result. And I want to give it an explicit type. It can't tell what type, but I know it should be an integer. Now the reason I do this, so in Swift, a lot of the times we can just use implicit types and keeps the code very concise. But this is a case where it's very helpful to spell out the explicit type, because what I'm doing is I'm defining the API. Now without this, what does score return? You couldn't tell. Now we have defined that score returns an integer. And once it has that information, I can say, well, then create it. Now create the thing. This is going to be, this is wrong. So it's like score the key, but it's not really a key. This is wrong. Because P1 is not just some random entry, it is specifically one of the problems. So I don't like that. Score problem is better. So what we're doing now is, I went down a road, started to think about, is this the right API? It's like, no, it's not the right API. And I'm not even sure that this is correct. A lot of this may fold up and disappear over time, like down the road. That's totally fine. I just want to get started. The important thing is to make progress, and part of making progress is learning and making decisions and figuring out what's going to stick and what's not. So now let's create score problem. This is going to be the problem string. I'm again looking, my long pause there is me looking at the API and going, should it just be score with an explicit problem? But I can change that later. The problem is a string, it returns an integer, and there. So at this point, this should crash. Great. And I want to assert that the score is equal to 8, because that's up here. That's the initial weight. Let's get this to fail in the simplest way possible. So remember, in test-driven development, you want to start with a failing test. So far, I've been bouncing back and forth using very small steps of the 3 laws of TDD to build up, to write a little bit, implement just enough skeleton that you see over here, until finally we have enough where this looks like it's not a bad start for a full complete test. Again, I'm not sure about the design because we're going to be doing various things to this, but that's for later. So now I have a complete test. I want the test to fail, and the easiest way to get this to fail is to return 0. And there it failed in the way I want. Good. So now I need to get it to pass. The dorky way to get it to pass is to return 8. This is obviously incorrect, or I should say it's incomplete. This will work for any problem whose score is 8. But that's enough for me to commit this. So this is a feature I've written 7 lines, so this isn't much. This is not greater than 8 lines. So let's say this is feature begin answer accumulator. And we have a beginning. All right, now we need to refine this. When you see the sort of the naive implementation here, which you know is incomplete, then the next thing is, well, what's the next test that will force this to become more generic? And here's one. Right? All I did was change, duplicate everything, change the weight, kept the same problem. And I expect a different score. Of course, this will fail. And now I need to get it to pass. How do I do that? Well, I need to capture, now the fun begins, okay? So the entry has been unused. I need to capture that entry weight, or I need to capture the whole entry. I don't know. At this point, I'm going to do the naive thing to get it to pass. So I'm going to say, take the entry weight and assign this to a property. Oh, it's like, it's not the initializer. It is doing that. Okay, so that's why it was complaining. Why is this complaining? This is now complaining. Hello, Tyrannosaur. Welcome. Where in the world are you? Love to know. This is now complaining. Now that I've given it a property from Minnesota in the USA. You see the red squiggly here, and down here is where it shows the error. And it says there are no initializers, because what's the value of that? Well, I can just say this is starts with 0. There. Right? And the self dot is now shown with this ghosted thing that's a hint that says you don't really need self anymore. And now I think I can return wait, and I think this will pass. All right. So this works for only for the scenario we have, which is one entry, and we're asking one question. What's the score of the problem? We're not even looking at the key. It might be kind of interesting to say, let's change this to force it to look at a different key. But before I do, let's deal with some duplication here. The weighted entry needs to vary between tests. So I'm looking at the duplication between the tests, and there are things that are going to be in common and there are things that are going to be different. The most obvious thing in common is that they both need an answer accumulator. Depending on your style, you may be perfectly content with doing it this way. I have a preference for putting this into a property. So let's do that. A reminder, or maybe it's new to you, that when you create properties in XCTestCase classes, they should be implicitly unwrapped optionals, because you don't initialize this thing. XCTest initializes the thing. And after it's initialized, it goes through and calls setup or setup with error. And here we say, make me an answer accumulator. And having done that, get rid of it when you're done. Otherwise, you have memory leaks. All of this should still build. And now that we have SUT defined out here, but not used yet, I should be able to get rid of these lines. And it should just pick up the accumulator from the property. Good. So that's a small thing, but it simplifies the test just that much. It adds a little complication to keep to maintain some simplicity. All right, so let's keep that. Now this is a test-only change. So I'm going to mark it with T, lowercase t, and say extract SUT. All right, so Isuru is asking, can you please do a brief explanation of what this survey app is for and what it does? Because you weren't there when the series started. No problem. Let me find here. So I did a survey of folks to say, what would you like if I were to make a video course online about unit testing? Well, what do you want? And it was free-form answers, completely open. It's funny that it shows this as a non-breaking space. I suppose that's, I don't know. So this is a comma separated value list. The source, this first column, I'm actually not using in this thing, but it's where did the people come from? And I did that by setting up different places for people to answer and pointing people to, like, the mailing list people, go here, Twitter people, go there. How interested are you in an online course on iOS unit testing? Oh, that's the weight. And this is a score. People were like, I'm very interested, I'm not very interested. I then turned that score into the weight by doing Fibonacci, uh, giving it a Fibonacci weight. So basically, I want the people who are very, very interested, I want their answers to count more, much more, than people who are only a little bit interested. And then I asked, what are some annoyances and inconveniences you suffer from when it comes to iOS unit testing? So this was a free-form text box. No, people will answer all sorts of things. I then went through by hand and read each answer and said, okay, let me assign a few keywords. Problem 1, 2, 3, up to 4 keywords. And here you see, let's see, some of the keywords. Like here you can see what to test is one. Reactive, combine, Swift UI really I should put in there. So that's one I missed from that answer. So these are the problems, and then there are other categories like what do you want and what would be a killer feature. So that's a quick background. I'm now taking here the weight and the problem. So that might be something like, I really want to know how to unit test Swift UI. Well, I'd like to see how many people answered that, score them, add the scores together. So that's why I'm doing all this. We've accumulated one entry, and we've done now a different entry with a different weight. So that changes that. There's nothing in, that's not the one. There's nothing that's looking up the problem though. Right? So that's kind of odd. In other words, this P1 is ignored. It's the fact that it's P1 here is what I want, but the code isn't actually doing anything with it. So let's force the issue. Rather than writing a new test, let's just make this a little more expressive. Oh, wait, before I do that, I just saw another area for cleanup, and that is this explicit type. Let's get rid of that. It comes back, you see it sort of snaps back, but it's in this grayed out thing, and that's how AppCode is showing the implicit type. So it's not actually in the code. This should still pass. I'll just run the tests because it's so fast. And this is a test only change. So I mark it with a T, use explicit type. I also want to, I made a change to the survey here of adding one keyword there. So this is really an environment change. All right. Now let's come back and change this test. So this time, it needs to be sensitive to that the problem description, which I'm just using P1, P2, just because it's simpler. And this should fail. Whoops. Okay, it didn't fail because it ignores it completely. So this test, this is how you test the tests. I wanted to see the test fail, but it didn't fail, which meant that either the code already does what it claims it does, or it's a bad test. In this case, my test isn't great. Like, it's not actually forcing the issue here. What would force it would be to say, let's score. We've now accumulated a different problem, but we're going to look up. We've accumulated P1, but we're going to look up P2. Now that should fail, but it should return 0. So maybe this is a different test. I'm just going to make one for now. But this isn't realistic. Maybe it's okay. Right? If I've accumulated P1, but I'm looking at P2, the score should be 0, but I'm not actually ever going to do that. But it would force the issue. So maybe it's what I need for now. We can clean it up later. Right? So now I have a test failure. That's good. Now let's figure out how to use the problem. And let's hold on to the entire entry. And okay, what I'm doing now is I'm shifting things around, but I don't want, I would like to avoid running this test. I want to run the other test first while I do this. So let's just skip. Let's just skip this test for now, using skip if. And I want to keep the other tests passing. Okay, I can show there all the tests. Because what I want is to take the return maybe the entry weight, except if there is no entry, and default to 0. Okay, so that passes. So now this is no longer used. So this should go away. So I'm refactoring the code using the previous tests, but haven't activated the new test, hoping that this will solve the problem. The tests continue to pass. If I reactivate this, you know, I should make a, I think I need now a new shortcut or a code snippet if you're in Xcode to say, you know what, I just want to skip this test for now. Because I get tired of typing this. I've only just started to use skipif. Let me just jot that down as on my whiteboard that you can't see. I have a set of code snippets. If you are not already subscribed to my blog, come over here. Go to qualitycoding.org and get code snippets. And you can get the ones that I use, both Xcode snippets and AppCode live templates that help me move quickly. And I'm going to add that one. All right, so now this fails. This fails in the way I want, but now we're keeping track of the entire entry, excuse me, the entire entry, not just the weight. But we need to look up the problem. This is, again, going to be super dorky to say if the problem is the same as the entry problems first, then return that, otherwise return 0. This is not what we want, but I think it will pass the test. It does. All right. So this is feature where score problem matches first problem. Obviously not correct. Or I should say, obviously not complete. It is correct for the case we have, where you have one entry and you have one problem in the array. It's not correct for multiple problems. So it's incomplete, not wrong, not outright wrong. It's incomplete. It works for this set of data. We want it to work for a larger set of data, which means I need more tests. But we are coming up on the hour, and you may have some questions. So rather than continuing down, this has been a good start in an hour to create a few new tests, to start creating a new thing, even if the code is strange for now. The value of getting to green fast, like, you know, why do I bother putting in kind of gross code like this? And the answer is, I want to get my tests passing as soon as possible, because once they're passing, I can refactor, I can change the code with a ton of confidence because I have tests. So, any thoughts, questions, anything you want me to address before we wrap up for today? It can be related to what we've done so far. It can be unrelated. It can be totally random. Go for it. Anything in the chat? If not, thanks for watching. I'm just sort of I'm delaying now to give you a chance to type anything because there's a slight lag between you typing and it showing up here and then you saying that I see it. If there are no further things, okay, here's a question from Tyrannosaur. Do I do any one-on-one mentoring? The answer is yes. The reason I'm hesitant is let me dispense with being hesitant. Let me just show you. No questions regarding the code, but big thumbs up for your video course. Awesome. Thank you, Isuru. If you go to my website, I have services. And those services include some larger workshops. These are now going to have to be done through my new employer where I work as a full-time coach through Industrial Logic. But if you have any thoughts or requests for these workshops, do go in there and fill out your information, because maybe you can do it for your company, or if you can't do it like for an entire company and you're just like, I'm just one person, fill it out anyway. And then once I have enough people to run an open enrollment workshop, I'll do that through Industrial Logic. I also do PubMod sessions. That's through PubMob. You just click in there and you'll see. I also do coaching. So the answer is yes. I do provide coaching. The reason I was hesitant about it is because I am a professional coach now, where it's my main job. But my company is only, the company I work for is only going to be interested in like big engagements. Like we work at some pretty big places, working with the coders all day, every day, helping them get better. But for just a side thing, like on a Saturday, getting together for an hour every so often, ping me through here. So go to Quality Coding, into Services, hit up the coaching. It's not free, unlike, Twitch. It's not free, but check it out. See if you think it would be valuable. And of course, there's the book. All right. Okay. Time for one more question. So, Tyrannosaur is asking, how do I feel about unit testing Swift UI so far? And the answer is, it is much more doable than I thought. Apple, no thanks to Apple, who has given no thought or interest in unit testing Swift UI. They say, that's what, test everything outside of Swift UI with unit tests and test Swift UI with UI tests. No, that's not helpful. What is helpful is View Inspector. View Inspector will come up a lot when I start showing Swift UI unit testing, because this is the way to go. It is a third-party thing made by this person to solve the problems. And for example, you can say, with a little bit of work, but it's not too bad, and I'm going to say, find the button called back. Right? You don't have to say, go into the VStack, go to the third entry of the VStack. Make sure that's the button. Make sure its label is back. No, you can just say find the button called back, and then do stuff with it. So this is let me share this. Oh no, I already did share it. So that's the way I'll be showing this more in the months to come. All right. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for hanging out and participating with me. It's always good. I learn stuff. This helps move my little project forward. And let's see, next week I will not be live streaming because there is the first international TDD conference that's free. Where is that? Here it is. I don't know if you're interested, but I'll just toss this in here. So I'm going to be doing that all day. I'm not speaking. I'll be attending. So that's the TDD conference next week. So I won't be streaming next Saturday. So I'll catch you some other time. Great book, by the way. Thank you. Nothing warms the heart of an author more than hearing that. And I'm glad you could come out. All right. That's it for today. We'll see you another time. Subscribe to my Twitch and you'll get, you'll be notified whenever I go live. If you are watching this recording on YouTube, then subscribe to my YouTube channel and do all the things, like it, hit the bell, do all the usual things so that you can get all my content. All right. That's good for now. Take care.